Hello, I'm James,
Hi, I'm Jimmy,
and welcome to A Job Done Well.
the podcast that helps you improve your performance and enjoyment at work.
Good afternoon, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, James. How are you?
I'm doing fabulously, thank you very much. The sun is out, it's a beautiful day in Nottingham, which is quite unusual, really.
I don't know. Every time we're doing a podcast at the moment, you're fabulous and the weather's fabulous.
Yeah, if I tell myself
Yeah,
often enough,
exactly.
I'll believe it. Anyway, what are we talking about?
So we are talking about corporate myths because we think that there are certain things that people and organizations believe that aren't necessarily true, that hamper performance, distract people, take people's energy. And we thought that we would share our perspectives on some of those key corporate urban myths. And yeah, before we get into that, James, what have you been up to?
Well, I have got another film
Well, let me
recommendation.
guess, it's
I went to-
French.
It was actually, yeah, because I'm a bit highbrow. It's French. It was called, I forgot what it's bloody
Oh,
called
you're
now.
making it
It's
up.
called
You're
the-
making it up.
No,
What
no,
have you
it's-
made up now?
It's called The Marching Band, and
Okay.
it's a sort of French version of, you know, those Billy Elliot
Oh,
stories
yeah.
from Northern Town Boy, just good, but very good. Anybody who's interested in classical music and Northern France should go and watch.
You know,
it. I'm
we
not
don't
saying
have a
that
big
I'm
enough audience for that person to be part of the audience.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just saying.
No,
I think you make up these films because, I say that I did actually go when you started going on about 1,000 beavers. I was sure that you made that up for your own amusement.
and you went
I
and
did actually
checked,
go and check, and it is true.
and it is a film,
It is.
and it's very
Yeah,
popular
it's
as
a
well.
cult film.
Following.
It's a cult film. You were not lying. I just thought you were doing that.
That's
amusing yourself.
The difference between you and me, mate. We're highbrow and cultured. So just going back into that, and so we had this conversation yesterday whilst we were preparing for this podcast, and I said, "Oh, you should go and watch this film." Do you know what Jimmy went and watched instead last night? You
The
can tell
Last of Us.
me, which is a zombie.
No, you don't need to explain to it because people who
series.
listen to this know what it
Yeah,
is.
they know.
As opposed to your
I know.
French subtitled highbrow
I
bullshit.
try and instill some culture into this show. Right, go on then. How about you? What have you been up to then? Oh yeah, you were watching some rubbish
Apart
TV,
from-
weren't you?
Watching Pedro Pascal, the man, he's one of these men that women love and men want to be.
Oh right,
So it's worth checking out.
I can relate to that.
It's the crosser you've had to bear, James. I know.
Yeah, Pedro Pascal is a man I can relate to.
Corporate myths. First one up, James. Your
Yeah, okay. I'm listening.
personal favourite.
Here we go.
Targets drive good performance.
Yeah, here we go. So the annual, here's your target. This is what you've got to do. Here's your bonus. Off you go. Guaranteed to drive good performance. That is the belief.
Yes. The belief that people have is that if you set a target, people will have ambition, they will try and reach that target, and that will deliver you success. It's a fantastically lazy and inept way of managing performance, is it not?
Right. Well, I think so, but we should just unpack it a little
Okay.
bit rather than me just frothing. So why do I think it doesn't work? So first of all, if you want to drive performance,
Yeah.
giving somebody a target and incentivizing that with a carrot and stick, they will invariably hit the target. So that I wouldn't dispute. The really unfortunate bit is it the target that you really want to hit? Because what they will do is they will hit the number that you've given them, which is not necessarily the same as the outcome that you want.
Well, I think that's the problem, isn't it, James? That people don't always know exactly the outcome that they want. They might know a direction of travel, or they might know they want to improve, but setting a target implies absolute clarity on exactly what you want and at exactly what level. I think that's crystal ball gazing a lot of the time.
Well, and also numbers that are a proxy for performance and not actually performance. And what do I mean by that? So if I was to say to you, oh, you've got to worry about your health, your target is to improve your health, well, that's quite difficult to measure because what we're talking about blood pressure. Are we talking about stamina? Are we talking about statins? Are we talking about the number of cigarettes you consume? It could be 101 things, your health. But so what people do instead is they pick something, usually something that's easy to measure, like in this instance, your weight, and they target you on your weight.
Yep.
And then, of course, people rush off to try and improve their weight. And, well, as we all know, there can be some fairly disastrous consequences in that sphere. So weight and health are far from the same thing. But the same thing goes on in business. I worked in a call center for a while, and we had two measures. One was effectively a measure of productivity.
Yes.
So how much time can you get people sitting at their desks ready to answer the phone? And then the other one was really, it was one of a question of planning effectiveness. When you've got people sitting at their phone, how busy are they? But of course, these two measures fought against each other. So you'd have one group of people running around shouting, get on the phone, get on the phone. They get them all on the phone. The utilization would go down because there weren't enough calls for all the people. So the planning people would run around going, get off the phone, get off the phone. I mean, it's such absolute madness. Yeah. But you see
ultimately, what you're trying to do is run an efficient operation and give good service. But as you say, the proxies that you're using in that example are just all the wrong things. I think the other thing that relates as well is what's the actual level of performance you want to get. And I remember running a sales team, and we had agreed what the annual targets would be. And we found after a few months that we were smashing these targets. So we were doing our monthly reviews, and we had your favorite rag status. We had green performance across the board. What we had to do is we were beating performance on some of these metrics by so much that we made them purple stars. So we had red, amber, green, purple star. But the point being, we set the level at a completely wrong level. So we think it's like, this is the level we need for budget. This is an ambitious level. But then when you start to do the work, you realize, actually, that's an easy target. It's what you set for the whole year. So you're stuck. So you don't stretch performance as you think. It just actually means that everyone, well, I only need to do that well because I can beat the target without any effort.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen that loads of times. I've seen people, I don't know, maybe it be claims cost or whatever it is, but they hit a level, and they hit the level come October, and then they stop for the year. And why do they stop? Well, because they think, well, they get the same target next year, so I'll just put some in the bank.
Yeah, don't overachieve, because then they'll just up the target. So I think if we were saying, does setting targets drive behavior? I think the answer will be
absolutely,
yes, it does. If we're saying, does setting targets mean that you get good performance? I think you're in the lap of the gods with that one.
So here's my question then. What is a better thing to do than set individual targets?
Great question, James, because let's not all be smart asses and just slag things off. What would we do? Well, you're the numbers man, James. What would you do?
Well, I would think about what your overall purpose is. There we go back to that. Yeah. I would try and put a basket of measures around that, not just one. And then I would measure performance against that. And I will give, if you must target people, and I give them joint targets to hit that level of performance, which will therefore reduce the amount of cheating.
Yes. And the two things to add to that, I think the setting an overall goal for an organization, a unit, works really well because everyone gets interested in how you're improving. And if that is linked to the organization's purpose, happy days, then you're going in the right direction. The other thing I would say is if you've got a measure, just aim to improve it. Aim to improve over what you've done. And that ethos of continuous improvement will drive you to be more successful. So we can slag off targets and we can tell you a better way of doing it. As well as recording this podcast, we help individuals, teams, and entire organizations achieve outstanding results.
If you'd like to find out more about how we can help you, please get in touch. Email either jimmy@ajobdonewell.com or james@ajobdonewell.com.
What's the next one then, James?
All right, the next one. This isn't going to go well for us. People in authority have all the answers and know best.
So let's just unpack that a little bit. The corporate myth is that seniority, the more senior you are, the more you have knowledge, the more you have experience, the more you have authority and power, and therefore you know best. So two things. One, senior people should just do what they're telling you. So you should follow their orders. And two, we hold them in awe. So I could never be a senior person because they know all the answers. And I don't know all the answers.
Well, yeah. And you've got two sets of people who believe this. First of all, the people lower down the chain. Well, that's bad enough. But what's really bad is when the people at the top of the chain think they are it's all quite knowing and all superior.
Well,
and at which point it starts to get really quite
it does.
disastrous.
But I have to confess, as somebody who was relatively senior in a few organizations, one of the things that I did very well, as you can testify to, everything I said with amazing confidence. People then mistake confidence for knowledge and believe that's the right answer. I remember going into one organization where when I joined, the new team I picked up, the newest person on my team had been there for 13 years, right? And when I started to say, we should do X, Y, or Z, they just went off and did X, Y, Z. And I was like, no, I don't really mean do X, Y, and Z. I mean, tell me what's better than doing X, Y, or Z. But they didn't challenge because they thought I was senior and I knew all the answers. I didn't. They had loads of knowledge. They had loads of experience, but they weren't sharing it with me.
Well, so why though? Hang on there. So, this person, they are the boss. They've been promoted.
Yep.
If they didn't know the answers, they wouldn't get promoted. So why is it wrong to believe that?
Well, I don't think you're necessarily promoted because you know all the answers. You're often promoted because you have the potential to perform well at the next level up. They're not the same things always. So I think the best leaders that I've worked with and what I ended up trying to aspire to be is somebody who is open to listening to people's views. Because if you're running a team of 20 people, why does your one experience, your one set of knowledge outweigh the 20? So why not try and make the 21 people come up with the answers, come up with a way forward? And that's where I think it is a real limiting belief, both from senior people and people not willing to be open and tell senior people what's really going on.
Yeah, one of my favorite management quotes. This isn't a Deming one, you'd be pleased to hear. A chap called Russell Ackoff, and he said, senior managers know very little about an awful lot of things, whereas junior managers know an awful lot about very few things. And it really is, the devil is in the detail in organizations. The more junior the person, the more they know about that detail. But the real trick is for the senior manager to just have a little bit of humility and realize that they don't know all the answers.
So listening to those junior managers who know a lot of stuff, listening to them, but them also, if you're a junior manager, sharing that information. And I think also the other side of this corporate myth is, we both found it, is you hold senior people in awe. I could never do that job. And then as you get closer and closer to senior people, you realize they're only human. Actually, I could do that job. And we both reach reasonably senior levels in organizations. So if we can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So in summary, senior managers do not know all the answers and should listen and have a bit of humility. Junior people in organizations should be open and share their opinions and their ideas with senior people. And they should also believe that they could one day do that job as well. Right.
Very good. What's next?
So next one is, problems are a sign of weakness.
And so the other side of that coin really is about, thinking that you should reward success and punish failure if you're a manager.
Yes.
Or to put it another way, green is good, red is bad. I used to work with a guy, and we used to go back to the rag sheets.
Yeah.
He used to say, don't bring me red, bring me green. Do you know what he
Green.
got? Green.
Shit performance. Shit performance. We changed the definitions. We changed the triggers. We changed the thresholds. We changed what we measure, but it's all green.
It's all green. Yeah. You'd have to be terribly stupid, wouldn't you? And the point for me here is that you can't fix something unless you admit it's broken. So if you're not prepared to say something's red, you're on an absolute hiding for nothing from the get-go.
But when things go wrong, James, ultimately, it's just such an opportunity to learn and do better. But if you view things going wrong, problems as issues, as weakness, you're closing yourself up from learning straight away, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And this, of course, actually ties back to the one we started off with about targets drive good performance. Yeah, well, I will hit the target by any means whatsoever and not admit I've got problems. All these things internet.
Well, I think also the other part of this this myth is it really stops the ability to test as well as the ability to learn, doesn't it?
Yeah, because how can you set up a test and see what's going on if you aren't prepared to admit there's a problem? And that one, of course, actually links back to the thing about people in authority knowing all the answers. Yeah, because if they knew all the answers, you wouldn't have a problem, would you? Yeah.
Well, I think another part of it, though, in being open to learning and things going wrong, is I had a team that I insisted did tests before they went live, but they didn't really test in a way that was open-minded because everything had to work. So if you set yourself up to test success always, you're setting yourself up for a problem, aren't you?
Yeah, and I do think there is something cultural in organisations about it. I mean, when I started my career as a development manager in a beef burger factory of all things, it was very, glamorous job. But as a development manager, you test everything. Yeah, you start with a new formulation, you test it. Will it work? Will it go down the line? Does it go through the packing machines? Is it the right size? Test, 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 test. But that is the way you look at the world, and that's the way you start to think about it. But interestingly, when I started working for banks and things like that, they really didn't see that like that at all.
Quick question for you, James. Do you still eat beef burgers?
I do. Although I will give you a piece of advice. If it says value on the product, it means value in the product.
Ooh.
I will leave you with that.
Value on the product, it's value. Does that mean it's shit? Can you just
No, it won't be shit. It's just you probably don't want to think about it so much.
Oh, so if it says value on the product, it means it's got toenails in the product.
No, not toenails. I did once work with a meat buyer who got very excited. He said he got this new product for us. He wanted us to test it. And what was it? He said pork head flaps. Pork head flaps. Okay, so we got the pork head flaps delivered, and it was 3 tons of pig's ears.
Oh,
anyway, when you grind it up, no one can tell.
I feel we've digressed.
I think we should move on. Yeah, all right. If you've enjoyed our podcast, please share it with someone you think would benefit from it.
Also, like and follow us wherever you get your podcast, or on LinkedIn, TikTok, or YouTube. And 5-star reviews are always welcome.
And equally, if you've got any feedback on how we can improve the podcast, subjects you'd like us to cover, or questions we can help you with, please do get in touch. Email jimmy@ajobdonewell.com or james@ajobdonewell.com. Yeah, all right. Go on then. So, next one.
So, the next one is that your suppliers are there to make profit at your expense.
Now, I took over a job once, and I had quite a large outsourcing operation working for me. And the bloke I took over from said, it's really easy. What you need to do, just make sure you've got your foot on their throat. If you've got your foot on their throat and they can't wriggle, can't move, you'll have them. So that's how you manage suppliers.
I think one of the challenges here, James, and I think a lot of people like your former colleague do believe in that, is that there's a real win-lose relationship with suppliers. Whereas actually, I think you've got to look for more win-win opportunities. Now, if you're talking about suppliers in the commercial sense, which almost certainly you are, the reality is they do have to make a profit. So if you try and screw them into the ground so that they are making no profit out of you, your service will suffer at some point.
Well,
there'll be a payback.
If it's a strategic relationship, as in you buy a lot of shit from them, that's what we mean by strategic, and they go bust, you kind of got profit.
You have. Now, it's different if you're buying paper clips at a unit price. That's one thing. But if you're buying a service, you want to build into the delivery of that service a fair profit for your supplier. Keeps them interested.
I'd go further.
Go on then.
There is another phrase, one of the management gurus, probably from the 80s. I can't remember which one, shows me age. But the phrase was, companies don't compete, supply chains do.
Yeah.
And the point being, it's not about you as an organization, it's about you and your suppliers and probably their suppliers and how the whole chain delivers to your customers. And when you start to think about it like that and thinking about how you can improve capability in your business, actually working with your suppliers to constantly improve is really quite important. But if you've got your foot on their throats, you won't be able to do that.
And I think that people do waste a lot of effort in the win-lose battle with suppliers rather than looking at them as partners, being fair with them about the value exchange that you've got in terms of the service and the cost. I think also, if you treat them as part of your team, you can often expect more, get more from them, but you often have to give more as well. So I think there are the opportunities to really create win-win and not waste your effort and energy on battling with suppliers and improve performance.
There's no episode for us there. Win-win versus win-lose. We should probably move on to
Well,
our next. I like this one. You should focus on big strategic projects and not small tactical ones.
Yes, organizations are constantly doing big transformations, big technology projects. How many organizations out there have an AI project at the moment?
It's funny you should say that. I had a friend of mine or colleague contact me the other day, and he said his organization, he's trying to talk them back from it. They wanted to do an AI project. Why the hell they wanted to do an AI project? It's a bit like saying you want to do a rubber band project. Yeah. It's just about, chasing the latest thing. It's not really about the technology. It's about what's the problem you're trying to fix.
And AI as a classic is a solution looking for a problem. Whereas to be successful at an AI project, as we've heard previously from Alex, go back and listen to that episode if you want, but Alex will tell you that you've got to have the basics in place in terms of your infrastructure. You've got to have your data clean and you've got to have your people on board. If you can't make a success of it without having those things in place, but don't matter, we'll still do a big AI project without having the basics in place.
But you've got two things at play here as well, haven't you? So number one is you've got sort of fear of missing out. I need this new technology. I've got to be this big. Yeah. But you've also got the fact that people think it's the big stuff which makes a difference, not the small stuff. Well, you're getting back to our point about, people at the bottom of organization understand what's going on. The place to make lots and lots of change your organization is fixing all the small stuff that doesn't work.
And we are supporters of organizations' ability to make transformational gains by making small incremental changes to how they operate, optimizing what you do today. I mean, it does bring up, Jane, one of our favorite stories of the British cycling team. So Dave Brailsford, who's now a legend in sport and business circles, he had a whole philosophy about marginal gains. When he took over the team in 2003, he was the performance director. We had won one gold medal since 1908 and had never won the Tour de France. He took over and they obsessed about every tiny detail, whether it was the type of massage gel they used or the type of shirts people wore. Everything was about marginal gains. And he did this over a number of years. If you fast forward between 2007 and 2017, we won 66 Olympic golds and 5 Tour de France's. So completely transformed performance beyond all imagination, just by marginal gains. And the same applies to every organization we've worked for.
Very good. You know where the Tour de France is? Just out of curiosity. They do some great movies out there.
They're all subtitled though.
Yeah. So move on to the next one. The action is at head office. So what do I mean by this?
Go on.
So if you're going to build your career, what you need to do is you need to be in the corridors of power. You need to be walking around head office. You need to be shaking hands with the big knobs. That's where the action is. That's where you need to be seen. And sadly, there is some truth.
Yes.
But as we've said, it's because all the devil's in the detail and it's about how your organization works. The action is really, in reality, out in the outposts. So it'll be in that sales office, it'll be in that contact center. That's where the real action is. And that's the place where you go and you improve things. Whereas if you just spend your life walking around head office with fancy PowerPoints, you don't actually ever get a thing done.
And unfortunately, James, I have to say that on this corporate myth, there is some truth in it. I think the action, if you want to improve performance, is on the front line. I think the action, if you want to improve your career, often is in head office. And I know that there have been points in my career when I have been less visible in head office, London, wherever it is, and things have passed me by and I've missed out on things. So unfortunately, I think there is some truth in this. But I think you can get a better balance than some people have who do spend all their time in the corridors of power with their PowerPoint. Go out, learn the stuff, improve the stuff, and then go back to the corridors of the power with some successes behind you.
I worked for an organization once and they had a major office right down deep in the southeast.
Yeah.
But they also had offices all around the country.
Awesome.
They also had an office which is right up in West Yorkshire. Yeah,
Okay.
a long way. Yeah, a long way from the centre of power. But they employed loads and loads of people there, and they spent a huge amount of money. And there was a guy who had a reasonably senior job in the head office, and he had never once in 20 years ventured, I don't think ventured north of the Thames, to be honest with you. It's just amazing that you can manage it all from head office by looking at PowerPoint, because you just can't.
No, and that's very true. And that is a good point. There's one thing for managing a career, but yeah, you do have to get out and see it. Okay.
Right then, next one.
So our next one is that long hours mean that you're more committed and more productive.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. That one is very closely linked, I think, to the whole debate about should you work in the office or can you work remotely?
3 days a week in the office means that you're more committed and more productive. You're right, James. They are very close cousins, aren't they? What do you think?
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
So I think there is an element of, it comes down, they're all linked, aren't they? It links little bits to the action that happens in head office. So it's all about getting your face known and being seen to do a good job, whether you're doing a good job or not. I think it's a little bit toxic, actually. I have workplaces where you're expected to be there 50 hours a week, and then people just, the brain shuts down. They can't manage that.
I used to work quite hard, but there came a point at the end of the day, and I used to be doing some emails, for example, and I'd realise I was writing absolute bullshit. And at that point, I'd stop. Because I think if you carry on working, your quality is absolutely gone. You might as well not be doing it. So I used to go home and recharge at that point. But I think the presenteeism in the office, going into the office for certain tasks, having certain one-to-ones, some of the team meetings, solving complex problems, they can be done better face-to-face at times. But doing it in a very blunt blanket way, you've got to be in the office 3 days a week, that's nonsense, surely.
Well, there are a lot of stories about Best Buy in the US, the retailer, and they had this thing where they called it a results-only work environment.
Right.
And really their attitude was you can work from wherever you want. You can work at home, in an office, in a coffee bar, or at the beach, but they really didn't care. And they also said you could keep your time as much as you wanted. But instead of managing the things that people were doing, the key thing was, what are the results they're getting? Because if they're getting the results they're getting, do I really care how they're doing
Exactly.
it?
And I think trusting people to get the outcomes and output that you want, I think is a slightly different way of looking at it from, I'm going to force you to do these hours in this way, have these breaks, have this number of days in the office. I think you treat people like children, you're not going to get the best out of them.
Yeah, very true. And actually, interesting, I hadn't thought about that, but that links very much to the old question of trust. How much do you trust your employees?
And I think all of this 3 day a week, X number of hours in the office, all this sort of stuff, I think it shows a lack of trust. And it's all quite old-fashioned thinking.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting then. So those ones, actually, I think those ones all link together in one way or shape or form, because it's all about power and ego and how much you trust people. A couple of other different ones. You have to be extroverted to be a good leader. What do you think of that one?
Well, I think there's a few things that's probably worth mentioning here. I think the belief that leadership is all about noise and jazz hands and who's going to be the loudest, I think is complete.
That's what made me a good boss.
Complete fallacy.
My jazz hands.
Yeah. It's complete fallacy, though. I think understanding the difference between introverts and extroverts in terms of the definition that's often used is also about where people get their energy. So extroverts get their energy from being around people. Introverts get their energy from within, from themselves. So they need their time to energize themselves. There have been some great leaders who were introverts. To name three, Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates. Did you know all three of them were introverts who were outstanding leaders in different ways?
Sat back and thought a little bit.
And that's one of the key things, though, James, is that introverts will often be more reflective and think through things and come up with better answers than extroverts who tend to be a bit more decisive. And we mistake decisiveness for being good. But I think if you're an introverted leader, I think respecting the skills that you have, your ability to listen, your ability to think things through, your happiness to empower people because you're happy to let other people have the limelight, and reflection time. I think they're all important opportunities you have that some of us who are extrovert don't have. So I think this one is a complete fallacy. And I say that as an extrovert. So the final one, James, is that what we see on social media and from a work perspective on LinkedIn, people being successful, having lots of followers, winning lots of awards, they are highly successful people and are doing better than I am.
You know what they say?
What's that?
Old proverb. A hollow drum makes most noise.
That's very true, James, because people are more and more taking to social media to tell us how great they are and how busy they are and how successful they are. People are reluctant to share their more troubled and vulnerable moments. The question about awards is an interesting one. Did you know, James, that there are companies who will help you, if you pay them, obviously, they will help you source the awards, write your award submission, and ensure that you are successful. So,
well, I'll go better than that, actually. I've been approached probably like a couple of weeks ago. I got this email saying, Squawk Point Consulting, Squawk Point being the name of my business, you have won an awards for excellence in the petrochemical industry.
Well done, James. What do you know about petrochemicals? Fill up your car regularly?
Well, just unbelievable.
The other thing, I was listening to the Rusty's Entertainment recently, and they were saying that in the entertainment industry, there's obviously lots of awards like BAFTAs and Oscars and all that sort of stuff. Some of the awards, not all of them, some of them, depends on how much you invest in the award body, which tables you buy, how many seats you buy, as to
how likely you are to win.
Having said that, I used to encourage my teams to enter awards because I think there is something positive about reflecting on your successes. But that's very different from doing it for the sake of winning an award.
Yeah. But it occurs to me, actually, having been through that list, there is something that links all of it together.
Go on then. What's that?
Which is this whole, it's perception versus performance.
Yes.
So a lot of these things, I think all of them, it's about how you perceive things to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you show up at head office all the time? Have you entered awards? Are you always showing green? Have you got your foot on your supplier's throats because it makes you look match up? All of these things about looking to do a good job, but looking to do a good job and actually doing a good job are two totally different things.
And I think you're right, James, but I think I'd go a stage further than that, which is people build these perceptions and they hold these perceptions as their realities and they behave within them. And that's part of the reason for doing this episode was we wanted to really talk about these are some of the perceptions that we see people have and we have ourselves have held through our careers and actually share some contrary views to that and some ways of doing things better than perhaps the perceived ways. So there is a big difference between perception and the reality of life and performance.
Very good.
Hopefully people have listened to this episode and they have learned something about perception and maybe can choose a different reality for themselves. And if you have some corporate myths that you would like James and I to have a look at and have a discussion on, then just drop us an email and let us know.
Yeah, and if you need any recommendations on great French films, I'm your man.
Yes. Everyone's going to be watching a French film rather than the zombie apocalypse. Yeah, although it did give me bad dreams, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, well, it maybe did its job.
There you go.
Super. I shall speak to you later.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers now.